Again, if you have any questions, for me, then I can go ahead and answer them. And then when Senator comes in, he can share his thoughts with you in terms of why we're trying to move this thing forward. So, Gene, maybe you can give me direction in terms of how you want this meeting to go.
Yeah, thank you. Oops, let me just admit more people here. And am I speaking with, is it Ford or?
Yeah, first of all, okay. I apologize. My name is Ford Fuchigami. I'm basically with WHAM. I try to take care of all Senator's special projects. So, you know, agriculture is one of them. So I work on aquaculture. I work on small animal slaughterhouses. I work on trying to acquire more water for land that's out there. So those are the many different things. Also with me is Chung. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Chung Cheng. I'm the committee clerk for Ways and Means. Thank you.
So Chung's my boss, and then of course, Colin.
Hi everyone, Colin Peros here with Senator DelaCruz and Ways and Means. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you to Ford, Chung, and Colin for being here today, and we're excited to speak with the senator when he comes in. So, you know, what we do is we facilitate the Hawaii Aquaculture Collaborative. So it's an industry-led partnership whose goal is to collaborate to strengthen and grow aquaculture in Hawaii. And the purpose of today's meeting is to bring together aquaculture industry leaders and government partners to discuss perspectives on Senate Bill 818, the proposed transfer of the aquaculture program from DOA to ADC, Department of Ag to Agribusiness Development Corp. And since we're short on time, rather than go around for introductions right now, may I suggest that we hear from the WHAM team first. Then as industry partners have questions, responses, and comments, they can include their introductions and a brief overview of their business. Does that sound okay?
That sounds fine. So
Great.
let me get started. Basically what happened was that last year, Senator Wakai basically had been meeting with Senator DelaCruz. Senator Wakai was very concerned about the aquaculture division within DOA. He felt that it wasn't going anywhere. And Senator asked me to look into it. And sure enough, when I looked into it, I didn't see a lot as it related to aquaculture and the development of aquaculture parks or the industry itself. So what Senator Wakai did is that, you know, he introduced a bill that allowed more positions to go into the aquaculture division. But even at that point, and I do know Todd Lowe and I am sure most of you do know who Todd is from a previous employment that I had. And I worked with Todd when he was with ADC and when he was with the Department of Aquaculture. So I reached out to him and I asked him, you know, basically how best to move forward. I also worked with Phyllis and Morris at that time. And so at that point, what we did is that we started to look at how do we develop an aquaculture park. What I did is I looked for land. I went to UH, I went to DHHL, I went to the Department of Agriculture, I went to DLNR, I went to ADC, and we basically came up with an inventory of land that was available. But what I was trying to do is that, and again, I'm not an expert in this particular area, so if I'm speaking out of turn or you think that I don't know anything, you're absolutely correct, I don't. What I do know is what I read, and that's what I do. I read a lot about a lot of different things, and then based on my research, that's how I kind of try to do presentations both to Senator Wakai and Senator DelaCruz. So I thought the parcels of land that we were able to identify that was closer to the ocean would make more sense, because besides, you know, water, what we need is seawater. And if we could do a seawater well, I did go to Department of Aquatics, which is located in Staten Island. They do have a seawater well. I took a look at how they developed it, you know, what it would take to build it, and so on and so forth. You got something there?
Oh, he just has first meeting soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I already told him that.
He's probably have like 10-15 minutes.
So I'm just giving you the history.
You can just come over here then.
Yeah, okay, right there. Okay. Sorry, I apologize. So I've been doing a lot of research on this. The problem that I had was that as I went back and I looked at what the Department of Agriculture has done over the years, and you can validate it. It's almost nothing as it relates to your industry. So, I looked at it and I thought to myself, how do I move this thing forward when in fact, all these previous years, nothing was done to develop the industry. I know that you've put a lot of effort, and I went to the presentation that you did at the Ward Theaters. I thought that was excellent. I was able to go ahead and get a lot of information from that. I learned at that point that, some of the difficulties is that, number one, permitting, probably one of the most difficult things. Number two, basically, is utilities, electricity, basically water. And of course, more importantly, is the land that is available to do so. So what I did is I tried to look at where we could do and how I could incorporate all these different things when it comes to the development of an aquaculture park. Of course, Nelha was a classic example. It was proven, Nelha started to make money after about 5 years, based on the history that I had with it, in terms of reading it. So, that was a perfect model. So the reason why we came up with this bill and the reason why we wanted to move it to ADC was that, DBID has all the different entities necessary to help us move forward. They have the energy office. Electricity is a huge cost item for the industry. There's no question. Can we do microgrids? Can we do solar? Can we do battery storage? Those are some of the things. But if, again, you're part of a division or a department that has a division in there that can help you, that would be great. Nelha is in there. Nelha can provide us basically with information as it relates to how to develop an aquaculture park. The planning office is in DBED. So as we do and we take a look at planning on how we want to plan this out, we can draw on their expertise in terms of helping us. The other thing that was pretty important to me basically was that on the ADC board, we have Kaleo Manuel. Kaleo Manuel is the Seaworm deputy director. He's in charge of all the water allocation permits that are issued. So, I mean, if we're going to develop an aquaculture park, we would go to him and say, do we have the water necessary to do what we want to do? So all the entities that we're looking for are within DBID. And it would be much easier for us to work with ADC than it would be for us to work with DOA. So, that was a very, very important role. Now, in reading your testimony, and I've been monitoring this bill quite frequently, is that a lot of your testimony was surrounding about that ADC does not have the expertise to pull this thing off if we did it. And you're absolutely correct. They do not have the expertise. And that's the reason why the way the bill is written, the Department of Aquaculture that's within DOA would be transferred over administratively to ADC. Okay, we would leave all the regulatory items in DOA. We wouldn't take that with us. We would just take the development portion, Todd and his staff, to go and help us develop whatever is necessary as we move forward. So we felt that was very important. So that's one of the reasons why we came up with the bill. The language that's in the bill basically calls for, the 141 statute items from DOA and aquaculture to be moved to the ADC. And, in moving forward, we think this is the best for the industry and, in terms of doing the development. So that being said, I'm open to any questions.
Okay, well, thank you for providing that backdrop, Ford. I also see that the senator is coming on, although connecting to audio. Before we field any questions, does he want to add anything?
That might just be a staff member who's signing in, but he'll be
I
joining
see.
us in person in the room when he is here.
Okay, thanks so much for that. And so, yes, any one of our industry members care to comment or reflect on what Ford has been saying?
Well, hi, this is Fred Mencher. I'm puzzled as to why you think of the Mokuleia site as a saltwater site when it really doesn't have very good access to salt water. There's the freshwater runoff there goes very deep, so it would be difficult to drill a well that would give you full strength seawater. If you try to go to the ocean, it's a rough area, so it would be hard to establish a pipe the way Nelha does. At Nelha, the ocean bottom drops off very steeply, so you have good access to clean, deep ocean water relatively near shore, where at Mokuleia, that's not the case. So it doesn't seem like a good saltwater site. Also, it's not a very sunny site. I grew algae in Kahuku for 27 years. Kahuku is a significantly sunnier site than Mokuleia, and still we had trouble during the winter growing the algae because the days were too short and there wasn't enough sunlight. So a site on the South Shore or in Waianae would be much better, both for access to clean salt water and also for sunlight for growing algae, which I think would be essential for a multi-faceted aquaculture facility.
Well, the site basically, again, I call it the Dillingham site, which is located above the Dillingham Airport, is what it comes down to. Again, that primary function of that site wasn't strictly salt water. It was basically, you have the pond that's there. Again, you need to test the water. There also is that on the airport property, which is actually owned by the Army, or there is a second well that's there that basically, I mean, we're not drawing any water whatsoever from that well. The one well that is actually operating provides water for the community along with the airport. So just the fact that the land is available and we felt that it was an area that we could go ahead and get started. Our intent basically is that you're absolutely correct. There's going to be
Ford, can I just interrupt because I don't have too long?
Okay, go ahead.
You guys can continue.
Okay.
So I think Ford had mentioned to me that some of you were concerned about the bill about moving aquaculture from DOA to ADC. Let me just give you some premise, is that when Sharon Hurd came before the Ways and Means Committee, my question to her was, how many aquaculture ag parks do we have? And the answer is 0. We don't have any. And so ADC is supposed to start to develop some of these type of things. Within the last 13 years, we were able to buy 4,000 acres in Central Oahu for farming. And so I'm hoping that we're going to be able to buy more assets so that we can develop more ag parks and warehouse space. But DOA doesn't seem to be the agency that's willing to go and buy more land or buy warehouse space, cold storage, all of those type of things. ADC seems a lot more willing to purchase property, develop it, and lease it. So most, if not all, of the 4,000 acres that ADC has right now in Central Oahu is all leased to farmers. And so that's the bottom line. That's the only reason why I want to move it to ADC, is so that we can start to purchase more property. I know Fred was talking about this property versus the Waianae. Okay, what's wrong with both? Why do we have to choose? We should have many aquaculture ag parks throughout the state, but we need somebody that's going to be able to develop it for us if we can start to get money in the budget to purchase land. Anybody? That's the bottom line. The regulatory functions should probably all remain with DOA. I'm talking about starting to get land developed, land bought, so we can develop aquaculture ag parks. Anybody got questions? Nathan.
Hi, how's it? I really appreciate the fact that the state of Hawaii is trying to move aquaculture forward. Is something that I'm passionate with, but I keep hearing about, development. What is the tangible benefits, support, and assurances that our existing businesses who have been around for some of us up to 30 years are going to get from this changeover. I think the uncertainty is really what's concerning most of us who exist already.
No, so the regulatory functions from within DOA will remain. ADC is not a regulator. We're talking about starting to expand the industry. So if most of you are on private land, I don't think this change is going to affect you really if the regulatory functions remain at DOA. I don't know if that answers your question, Nathan. And Ford, you can correct me if I'm wrong too.
No, you're correct.
Okay, any other?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. How about Fred?
Yes, will this changeover allow existing leaseholders or permit holders at Mokuleia to remain where they are?
Yeah, so that's actually a new park that we have now, and that's something that we're trying to work on with DOA and ADC. The problem is DOA has no impetus to want to even do it. You know, Todd Lowe had actually mentioned to quite a bit of people, he hoped the bill dies so that he doesn't have to do any work. So that's not acceptable. You know, we're either going to help expand the industry or we're going to leave things status quo. So we want to make it as seamless as possible, not to interrupt any impact on the existing farmers that utilize the aquaculture division. The main goal is to expand inventory so that we can have aquaculture ag leases.
Thanks for the question,
Dave?
Fred. We have
Oh, who?
Aaron, Neil, and then Dave.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Senator. My name is Erin Ewald. I do regulatory affairs with Taylor Shellfish. I do appreciate the explanation. A couple of the concerns that I do have, though, is with the language in the bill. It does seem to draw out some of the funds for disease management, for laboratory funding, in order to put that into the ADC. You know, there are some components that were discussed earlier as far as the need for water, the lack of movement from the Department of Agriculture. I'd just like to say that, you know, having done permitting for quite a while now with Taylor, the slow pace that permitting does put a damper on a lot of things, but it goes forward in a method that's built on relationships. It's built on a lot of development of practices and processes that are critical to the function of those businesses. And so I just want to make sure that, am I not reading the bill correctly, that it's not taking funding away from Department of Agriculture for disease prevention, for laboratory purposes, because those are the critical things.
Okay, Ford, you want to chime in?
Yeah, the answer is no. The only funding that we would transfer over is the funding that's associated with the program ID that's aquaculture. All the regular funding that goes to all the other departments will remain. It won't be touched. Secondly, as you know, Senator DelaCruz is the WAM chair. If they feel that you know, there's any funding that's necessary to improve what they're doing, the Department of Agriculture needs to come to WAM and basically ask for the additional money. But funding will only be associated with Todd Lowe and his program ID. That's it.
Yeah, and if the regulators felt like, you know what, we're understaffed, we have a lot more permits coming in that we got to process for agriculture, they haven't communicated that.
It's not with Department of Agriculture. It is a lot of times with the other federal and other agencies in order to move product in and out, or even to get farms permitted in the first place. It's not necessarily wholly with Department of Agriculture. So I don't know that I'd place the full blame on that agency itself.
Okay, that's not necessarily in the bill. It does, so this is only internal within the state.
Correct.
Yeah.
So is there a lot of communication that you're doing with the industry to kind of find out what those processes are?
We can, but I don't think that's the kind of stuff we're going to have to work with aquaculture industry. These are things that Todd Lowe has not communicated to us. So if they need support, I'm willing to support as long as we're growing the industry.
Just to chime in on that, and we can do this. The farming industry came to us and said basically they have a very difficult time when it comes to shipping intra-island. Okay, so what we did is that we brought in the DOA, we brought in CTAR, we brought in the CODEL, the congressional delegation, we brought in the U.S. Department of Agriculture Farm Division. We brought everybody into one meeting and we said, how can we improve in terms of reducing the cost of shipping? And basically, they talked to us about grants. They talked about all these other things. This needs to be done with this industry, but it hasn't been done. But it can be done. ADC was part of this meeting that we had when it came to shipping as well. So I understand fully what you're saying. It's not all about DOA, and we're not blaming DOA. But why hasn't DOA reached out to these other industries or these other partners, such as the USDA and the farm industry people, to ask them for assistance? Why haven't they reached out to the congressional team? When they came to see Senator DelaCruz, and Senator DelaCruz told me to take care of it, this is what I did first and foremost. I brought all the players into one room to figure out how can we accomplish these goals. And that's what we want to be able to do in terms of moving your industry forward.
Well, thank you. Let's see if we can get to a couple more questions. We have Neil, then Dave.
Okay, I got 5 minutes because I got to go to session, but.
Yeah, thank you very much, Senator. I think my name's Neil Sims. I'm with Ocean Era. I've been with a series, I think 4 different startup companies at the Natural Energy Lab over the last 33 years. And I love Nelha. It's a phenomenal facility. And part of the Aquaculture Collaborative mission here is we want to see a Nelha on every island. And I think it's because of the experience that many of us have had at Nelha. And so I think we want to applaud a lot of the motivations that are behind this legislation. I think that the concern that most of us have is we don't fully understand what the implications are. And so perhaps this sort of a conversation, if we'd started these earlier, we might have been able to iron out a lot of these wrinkles. I think, as you've heard here, one of the main concerns is just about the resources that may be available if it does get transferred across to ADC. Those of us that were around when John Corbin was running the Aquaculture Development Program previously, we really admired the way that John had a high degree of autonomy there. And that was, I think, desirable. He had a lot of resources at his disposal there as well. And so we're concerned that it might end up perhaps being the red-headed stepchild if it ends up by itself.
No, if I want to leave it a red-headed stepchild, I would just leave it at DOA.
Okay.
The whole point of us trying to move it is so that we can expand the industry, not kill it.
Yeah.
But if you guys are okay with status quo, we can just leave it. I mean, I'm not going to bend my backwards to try to get this thing going if nobody wants to try to expand it.
Yeah. No, there are some other things in here that I think are excellent. I mean, the idea of being able to have some jurisdiction over aquacultured animals rather than DLNR having those jurisdiction over those, because that leads to complications in hatchery production of octopus, or we're doing hatchery production of uku, and they'll be illegal if we've got some baby uku. So there's some things in this bill that we really admire, I think, but what perhaps could have happened earlier is more consultation.
Yeah, but we're at where we're at.
Okay. Moving forward, could we have more of these conversations perhaps so that we can be refining the bill so that the Aquaculture Collaborative...
Yeah, I mean, and it goes both ways though. So if the aquaculture community wants to meet with us and have discussions, we can do that too.
Great. Thank you very much.
So, I mean, you just need to be just as proactive as you're trying to ask us to be.
Okay. I think that's on all of us, and Jean can lead. And thank you very much, Senator.
Yeah, thank you. And let's see if we can get Dave's question in.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron basically asked the same question. I was just concerned about funding being removed from Department of Ag, just because there should certainly room for improvement, but it is, in my experience, really the only government agency that you can really get a phone call with anytime and that is functioning, and you can, it seems to work. Could it be improved? Maybe that could be argued, but in my opinion, it's always seemed to work. And like Neil said, especially agencies like DLNR, I have much more headaches dealing with. So that was just my concern, is I didn't want to see funding removed from the one agency around aquaculture that seems to be functioning, in our opinion.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the Senate drafts over the last several years, the Senate's tried to put more resources in both Department of Ag and ADC. So, you know, I'm from Wahiawa. I'm an ag person. And so we're always trying to get more resources for Department of Ag, but Department of Ag has to also want to be proactive in being a lot more assertive in wanting to expand ag. There's no sense in us giving them resources if they're not going to do something with it. The last several years, we gave additional positions to aquaculture. We're at status quo, even though we gave them more resources. So if they can show that they're willing to do more and they need help, I'm willing to help. But right now we need more aquaculture ag parks in general. I mean, Neil talked about NELHA. I don't think NELHA's not coming in here asking for additional funds to create a NELHA on every island. ADC already has a presence on Kauai. We can work with ADC in trying to get them to purchase more ag land or lands that's good for aquaculture ag parks.
Thank you, Senator. We have one more question from John Corbin, if you have time for that.
Just very quickly, Senator, I appreciate your enthusiasm in doing more for aquaculture. If the entity that's in DOA hasn't performed to date, why do you expect it to perform under ADC, a totally different structure? And from my experience as manager of the Aquaculture Development Program, what we need is a strong policy statement for the governor for agencies to work with ADP if they need to. And you don't need to be in the same department. That would be my comment.
Yeah, so if you just look at the two statutes, ADC was developed to develop more ag. Department of Ag, previously with sugar and pineapple, was really about it. It's just a regulatory and research agency. It's not meant to develop things. That's why ADC was created back in the 90s, because sugar and pineapple were going down. They didn't have the capacity to think economic development wise. If we keep saying that aquaculture is good for our economy, this can be a great economic development tool for our residents, create jobs, there is a nexus to DBED.
Well, again, I don't see the need for moving the program to ADC, but I appreciate your position.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much. And we know you have to go to session. Does anyone have questions for Senator's staff? If the senator has to go, if you guys are able to remain on for additional discussions, and let's see if we can get more meetings together like this. Is that okay with you, Senator?
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me join your conversation.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your
talk to you soon.
time. Aloha. All right, Ford, Colin.
We can take more
Chung.
questions if you have more questions.
Okay. Anyone have any remaining questions?
I have a question. Just, trying to wrap my head around some of the kind of back and forth and who is ADC and what are the goals of that organization or corporation. I'm concerned that about the information regarding the most recent audit and trying to figure out how they intend to move forward with an agency that they feel is not doing the job that they need to in order to develop agriculture or aquaculture, and still try and repair some or address some of the issues that were raised within that audit.
Okay, so are you talking about the ADC audit?
Yes.
Okay, I worked on the ADC audit after it came out, after the fact. Just so you know, I joined Senator staff in what year is this? 22, January 22. One of the first things I did was that Senator asked me to do was to work with the House committee that was doing the investigation on it was not just ADC, but it was DLNR too, that they were doing both at the same time. I basically read through the audits that was done by Mr. Kondo, the state auditor. I looked at it. And then again, I sat through hours of, I guess, discussions by, at that time was Representative Bellotti, who led that investigation. And after that, Representative Bellotti and I sat down and we crafted Senate Bill 2473, which basically outlined what changes needed to be made with ADC so that they can go ahead and they can improve and develop a more robust department. One of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that ADC, despite all the land that Senator mentioned that they manage and everything else that they do, they only have a staff of 6 people in that office. And you're talking about the executive director, which I'm sure you guys all know, Jimmy Nakatani, his assistant, a executive secretary, a property manager, a project manager, and they had one, what was called administrative service officer. That's it. Now, years and years went by where Senator at one point, 3-4 years ago, gave ADC 10 positions. But because they were administratively attached to DOA, it was DOA's department, HR department, to help him hire those positions. And it never occurred. And that's the reason why the funding's lapsed and these positions were never developed. Last year alone, we put in two positions. One for accountant 5, and another position for an asset manager. And that was part of the bill that we wrote, that we would increase their staff so that they can do what they're supposed to do. You know, it's one thing to tell people to do your job, but if you don't give them the resources to do the job, it's never going to get accomplished. So I've been working with Mr. Nakatani, executive director. I sit through every single board meeting that they have to see basically what is being discussed by the board. And I go over all those things with Senator DelaCruz, and we try to figure out how we can help develop that. But the main points about the audit was about the fact that they just didn't have the staff. If you were to go to them 2 years ago, or even right now, because it's just in the process, and ask them, you know what, we want to lease land, or we want to do something. They weren't able to do that because they don't even have a software program that allows them to do so. We basically gave them money last year. Again, they have now an asset management program by a company called Yardi. It's the same company that actually has the asset management program with DLNR. You know, and that's where we got it from. So we're making improvements, slow improvements, so that they can do what they want to do. And hopefully, you know, this answers your question in terms of, we do feel that they will go ahead and they'll develop to the extent where they'll be able to go ahead and then not only do what their basic function is now, but to add aquaculture to it and add Todd Lowe and his team to it. And they can go ahead and move forward in a positive manner. Because to date, every 3 years, after an audit is being done by the state auditor, 3 years later, he does a follow-up audit. And it's our mission basically to make sure that ADC has everything that was brought up 3 years ago done by the time the second audit is being done.
I do have a follow-up question, but it looks like Neil's got one first.
No, you go ahead, Erin. Please follow up.
I appreciate that. I think that that's great information to have. And I question, would it be worth then perhaps delaying on this bill and seeing, you know, what are the results of that audit, seeing how to move forward, and then working with the industry on some of these. There's just some gaps and some real information that's missing. What has gone well at NELCA? What has gone well at the Department of Agriculture? What is the industry really looking for? And to develop that roadmap before kind of leaving folks in the lurch and kind of moving this thing forward quite as quickly as it seems to have been.
I assume that you all had a copy of, one of the things that I talked to Todd about originally was about the strategic plan. Plan that I couldn't find, or I couldn't see, or it was outdated. So Todd did come up with a strategic plan. He did it in a very timely manner. I don't know if you have viewed it, but the strategic plan basically is from 2023 to 2033. Okay, and it outlined everything that he wanted to do. So, you know, we know in terms of WHAM, we know what he wants to do in terms of moving forward. We know where basically funding will be necessary for him to go ahead and get some of these things done. And we also know that, you know, what ADC needs to, what role they need to play in terms of obtaining that. But my question is, have you seen Todd's plan?
When did it come out?
Well, like I said, I got a copy as soon as he developed it. Let me see if there's a date on it.
Yeah, we did distribute that, I believe, and it is on our website.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember. I do remember that it was quite general.
Yeah.
So yes, but yeah.
And this was, again, this is normally how the state does business. I don't know how Todd or DOA does business. You know, besides the position that I hold here now, I've held other positions within state government. And, you know, this is basically how we roll things out. Again, if the intent of the strategic plan was for it to get it to the industry, and the industry to go back to Todd and say, you know what, we appreciate, but we feel that this is very general. How can we expand on it? This is where your contribution comes in.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Just letting you know that when it did come out, we tried to engage with him, and he wasn't didn't want to engage with industry on the plan at the time. Perhaps that has changed. We did reach out to him recently, but have not had a response.
Okay.
So I guess I'll close and just say that, you know, this came out, this is something that, you know, caused some real concern as far as what was included, what was like to figure out some additional meetings that we can have, so that, again, like Nathan was saying, that we can, or who was it, Neil maybe, that we would like to have those communications and just make sure that we're all informed moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. I think that's really where most of the disquiet, most of the concern comes from us. It is just, we didn't really know where this bill came from, and what it was trying to achieve, and what the implications of it were. And so people are always scared of the unknown. I think that's what you're running into here. There are two specific questions that as I understand it, that we have concerns. And one is what I heard the senator say, is that none of the resources were going to get moved out of Department of Ag across to ADC. Does that mean that the current draft has the laboratory services staying in the Department of Ag, or is that lab services going to come across to ADC?
Okay, the transfer will not be a physical transfer. Okay, again, what we want to do is just, we want to move just Todd and his group, and he still will stay in the same office, because we have very limited office space and things like that. So his connection to Department of Ag will still be relatively the same, because of the, you know, I guess the partnership that he has with them. That will not change. The only thing that will change is that Todd and Jimmy now will have the resources of the rest of the DBED departments to help them accelerate moving things forward, such as, again, electricity, possibly reaching out for permitting, water, and some of these other items.
Okay, thank you. Because I think that what I'm hearing from you there is that the funding for the aquaculture, animal health monitoring is going to stay within the Department of Ag. Is that correct? And those resources aren't going to be diminished in any way?
Only the program ID that is associated with Todd and his group, those funds will be transferred over. We will, again, the rest of the the division that's being left behind, such as the regulatory and everything else, those fundings needs to stay there because we still have to pay the staff, we have to pay everything else associated with it, the expenses, and again, whatever our operating expenses are there. But until we do the separation, we won't know exactly what will be coming over to ADC and what will be staying back in terms of funding wise. But again, being that WAM is initiating this, well, not initiating, but assisting ADC with this, we will be able to go ahead and put fundings in where it's necessary.
Okay, thanks. But I think, yeah, that when you say you're not certain, I think that heightens our uncertainty and that heightens our concern. But the other major concern we have, I think, is within the declaration of the Mokuleia as an aquaculture park. I think the aquaculture community is a fairly tight family, and we all greatly admire the perseverance that Ron Weidenbach and his family have shown over the years, working in the site that they have and not having any real security of tenure or any ability to expand. And I wonder if Ron's being very tactful and not speaking about this because it is his personal concern, but we all admire what Ron has done. I wonder if there's some way that we could, with this establishment of the Mokuleia Park, if that's going to go forward, we would want to have some protection, some grandfathering in of what Ron needs and what Ron also needs to expand. Is that possible to have that in this legislation?
Not in the legislation, but I'd be more than willing to have Jimmy or Todd sit down and talk to him. Here's the problem. When I took a look at the property, again, because it was located above the airports, I was able to determine that, you know what, nobody has a license or a lease on that property. Ron has been there for years. I understand that. But Ron is not on a license agreement. He's basically on a revocable permit.
Right.
Okay. The revocable permit allows him to stay there for 30 days, and with 30-day notice, we can remove him. Had he been on a license agreement, I wouldn't be able to touch him because of the commitment and the legal agreement that's there. 3 months ago, before the ADC board, and I was on it, the question by one of the board members, they asked Ron, and I don't know if Ron's on the call, but this is all public information and you can pull the tapes. They asked Ron, why haven't you signed a license agreement with the Department of Agriculture Development Corporation? And he said he didn't want to. Okay, why? I don't know, and I'm not going to get into that. That's his thing. But I don't understand, for somebody who's been there for so long, why he's only on a revocable permit and not on a license. Apparently, according to Mr. Nakatani at that hearing or at that board meeting, he said they've offered him multiple times a license agreement so that he can be secure and he can start to develop his land. But I don't know how you talk about expansions when, in fact, you won't even sign a license agreement with the property that you're on now. And I've seen his master plan. They've shared it with me. That master plan has been in place for quite some time. But to answer your overall question, no. Ron is a person that's there. His family's been there for many, many years. To be honest with you, I had the opportunity to meet Ron back in 2011 as the deputy director for the airports division, because again, he was above my property. But that being said, we want to keep Ron there. I made it very clear with Jimmy Nakatani. I've made it very clear with Morisata. Our intent is not to move him, but our intent is to develop the property around him so that he would have neighbors that are in the same industry as him as it relates to aquaculture. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you for that. That is reassuring to hear. Ron is on the call, and I don't know if we want to get into the
yeah. If Ron wants
details
to chime in, if anything that I've said is inaccurate, I'd be more than happy to be corrected. But I only know what I've read, and I only know basically what I saw at this board meeting.
Yeah, thank you for it. Appreciate it. John.
Thanks.
Well, this is Ron.
Hey, Ron, do you remember me?
Yeah, I hear you. The offer that we've been initially under a pilot scale on 18 acres because at the time we came in, Department of Health was investigating the property as a Superfund cleanup site. And we have been trying to get, once that was resolved, we've been trying to get a lease on the larger property ever since. What ADC offered us was a short-term license on 8 of the acres and taking away about 60% of the pond that we had in full production. So that's what we rejected, was giving up the pond. What was left to us was the areas of the pond that's subject to rock slides and are unsafe to work. And lost control of the pond by having another operation in the same pond. So that's why we rejected it.
Yeah, simply we are very interested in a lease and would have accepted a lease on the property or the larger property. What was offered was less than what we were currently working with. So just to clarify that.
And I appreciate that because that's what we like to see. For us to have developing, we would like to see people on long-term leases because what that shows us is that there's a commitment. There's a commitment to the industry. There's a commitment to the business. And we want to be able to help you. And, you know, like I said, had that explanation, Ron, to be honest with you, if that explanation was said during the meeting or the board meeting, then I would have had a better idea of it. But I only heard what I heard. But that being said, I fully understand what you're saying.
I'll just say, I think we're just careful and like to listen and understand. Of course, we don't want to speak out of turn, but yeah, that is the full context. And I'm sorry if that would have been helpful to know sooner.
Yeah, and again, Ron, and I apologize, I don't know you, I know Ron, but the intent is to keep you there and to develop around you. If in fact we decide to move forward with that property, it became a primary property because the fact that that land was recently transferred, EO'd back to the Department of Agriculture. And because agriculture at that time was actually still with aquaculture, was still, we thought it was an excellent opportunity to develop. We've also looked at another property. I don't know if you know about that, Wilakina. There's a 5-acre parcel there that we want to take a look at in developing as well. But, you know, I know Senator DelaCruz said that we want to develop all, but we got to start somewhere. We have to do 1 or 2 first, make sure that we fully understand what we're developing. And after the development, then we have the template to go ahead and develop elsewhere.
Well, thank you for clarifying. And Ford, we have another question from John Corbin.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. You know, I don't want to belabor the moving of the lab. I understand that the vet is under Todd's program, and the program is being moved to ADC, so that would say that the vet position is being moved to ADC. And I think there's language in the bill that says the special fund budget that supports the vet program is also going to be under the control of ADC. And I was wondering if you could clarify that.
Okay. Are you talking about Dr. Maeda?
No, I'm talking about the aquaculture veterinarian, and I understand we just hired a new one. We tragically lost the other one, Leah Masaki, and now we have a new aquaculture veterinarian that's been hired by DOA, and the industry wants that position to stay under animal industries and be supported by the lab and all the expertise within animal industries. And the bill seems to move with Todd, move that position to ADC, and it moves a special fund budget that supports that program also to ADC. And unless I'm misreading something, I appreciate some clarification.
You know, I'm not quite sure exactly where in the bill that language is. I'm under the assumption that the animal veterinarians and everybody else falls under Dr. Maeda. All of them report to him. It doesn't matter what industry it is, but again, I'm not positive. I know the only reason why I'm familiar with Dr. Maeda's name is I'm actually working with Dr. Maeda now with the animal quarantine station at the airport and at Halava. So, you know, again, he's dealing with the veterinarians there, but I need to get back to you on that explicitly to see, you know, whether or not that is the case.
The
If-
the physician funding is under the COTS program, I believe. I don't think that has changed.
One of the things, again, Aquaculture Development Special Fund, there is established in the State Treasury Aquaculture Development Fund, in which shall be deposited, and it's about the appropriations from that. I don't see anything, though, that talks about the aquaculture disease management program, support and research development programs.
I would just like to echo John's concern that I think we're getting a little bit different information with every question regarding the veterinary services and disease management.
Okay.
This is something that is really critical to industry.
Can you do me a favor then? To move this thing forward, if this is very critical to you, the bill is being, I think it's being heard already, huh?
It's scheduled tomorrow.
Okay, it's scheduled tomorrow. Because it's within the 24 hours and you guys can't submit testimony, can one of you show up at the hearing and verbally testify to the extent like you would like to offer an amendment, and John, put in your amendment? That will open the discussion, and what they'll do is that, hopefully they'll put it in, and by offering that amendment, it'll keep that discussion open, and that will give me time to go ahead and talk to Todd to see exactly where we're at with this.
Well, I appreciate that thought, but I'm unable to go to the legislature.
Can anybody else go?
I believe PCSGA, Representative Executive Director Kim Thompson is also on the line here, but I believe she supported an amendment within her written testimony, which was sent in this morning.
Well, either John, can you get what you would describe as the language that you want in the bill, get it to Gene? And then I'll get somebody else to introduce it.
Okay, let me work on that, and
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get that to you.
Okay.
This is Colin, but just so we're all on the same page, so the word veterinary doesn't appear in the bill. It pretty explicitly only repeals the aquaculture program, the fees for aquaculture services, and the aquaculture development special fund. Those are the only sections of statute that are being transferred. So, we do realize that there are other programs that fall under that shop, but only the aquaculture specific programs would be transferred. So this might go to, I think it was Neil's concern about the funding. There would be no drop in reduction in funding. It would just be a transfer, from Department of Agriculture to ADC. So the level of funding will be sustained for the aquaculture programs.
I think the concern is that the funding will be under the control of ADC, which is an unknown, I guess, for the industry.
Well, even though aquaculture will be under ADC, ADC will still have, aquaculture will still have the same program code.
It would probably just be separate under this one, but they might have their own subline.
Yeah.
They would probably have their own account.
So, John, do me a favor then. Go back and take a look at the bill, see where you think the language is not correct. And if in fact you find language there, then send me an amendment. If you don't find it there, if it's not in the bill, it's not going to go.
I see. All right, I'll take a look. Thank you for the offer.
Yeah, thanks for the question and the great discussion. Are there any final questions for the WAM staff? Oh, Bill, thanks for raising your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to introduce myself forward and thank you for the time that you're taking with us here to walk us through some of our concerns. So I'm Director of Public Affairs for Taylor Shellfish Farms. While we're based in Washington State, we've had a major operation for producing clams and oyster seed there at the Nelha facility for the past 30 years that supply our farms as well as shellfish farms all up and down the west coast of the United States. A really key facility both for our businesses and so much other portions of the industry, and just, you know, as we become aware of this legislation, obviously concerned that it's going to interrupt somehow the permits and inspections we need to keep that seed flowing from that facility there in Kona. So just starting to bone up on this bill and pay attention here for those concerns. So, but thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions for the WAM staff?
Just a quick seconding what Bill said. Thank you very much. I think your responsiveness to our concerns is greatly appreciated. So thank you for listening to us and for your receptiveness to the concerns, and thanks, John and Jean, for following up on this for us.
Yeah, agree. So thank you very much to the WAM staff for clearing up some of the things, that the concerns that we were worried about, and I think there may be some more that we can continue discussions on. So I'll circle back with our aquaculture partners as well as the WAM team to see if other meetings can be organized like this, and we'll see how we can move forward together for the benefit of aquaculture in Hawaii. So thank you all very
Always
much.
open.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you so much. Aloha,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.